So to kick off the convo, I think I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Booth to, I guess, lay the groundwork for what is inflation, what is, how does the monetary system work at the core, and to really strip it all back to a first principles level. I don't think there's many people in the world that can articulate it as well as Jeff. So,
just that.
Give it away.
Just that. Well, even the title of this panel, it presupposes we're going to measure a system through the system, and that becomes a big problem. So if you just strip back everything to first principles, the free market with technology is a deflationary force. What should happen is prices should fall as we invent new ways of doing things better. We save that time, and that in a free market that would transition with the broadest abundance to humanity. That's what would be natural. So anything that stops that is man-made. So when we talk about inflation, it is only man-made because we grant people an ability to drive up an inflation rate against that force. Now you could argue we have to, and we could have that argument, and a credit-based system does have to, otherwise the whole thing fails, and it fails spectacularly. And what ends up happening is a credit-based system, what we think it has to, most people believe that for a productive economy to work, you have to have 2% inflation. And I would ask you to question that belief, because why do you have to have 2% theft in your money for a productive economy, for us to trade with each other? It doesn't make sense. But while that belief stands, we will vote for people who say, yep, 2% inflation sounds fair. And then that 2% inflation has to be turned into 3% inflation, 5% inflation, 8% inflation, 15% inflation, because the debt has to be paid back in cheaper. And the only way to pay back the debt is either collapse the debt, a deflationary spiral, which would look like the 30s, and every other single thing we live in is from that system. So nobody's going to vote to collapse the system. And the other way to pay it back is to have high inflation for a long time, which causes other problems for society. So that's just where we are in society, and there is no fix from the system.
Sorry to interrupt. I think maybe just to define, is inflation, is it a measure of consumer prices rising, or is it a measure of monetary supply? And I guess also, how is money supply created or introduced in this current system?
Yeah.
And how do we get there? I think that's probably an important point to cover.
So it's introduced through credit. We live in a credit-based system, and that credit just has to expand. So it's introduced through loans and credit in the system, and it just has to keep going. So when you tighten it, where we are in the cycle right now, as the Fed is tightening, that's going to create a tightening and effectively a death spiral in a credit collapse. And other countries repaying that debt in U.S. terms are going to face their own death spiral first, and they're likely going to print into that. But again, if you just come back to that system that we live in, that you measure your house prices by, that you elect your officials in, that every single thing you do reinforces that system. And Bitcoin is an alternative system. And what's actually happening, if you ask, is Bitcoin an inflation hedge here? It's an inflation hedge and a deflation hedge. What it is doing is repricing that entire system over time. And it can reprice it through a credit collapse, or it can reprice it through inflation. That's what's happening, and it's slowly repricing the entire system and transitioning us to a new system that works with hope and abundance, hope, truth, and abundance on a new system, instead of the system we live in that has to work through coercion, fear, and control.
Hop in here, Greg.
So we always want to take a few gems away from Jeff. The reality that we're based on a credit-based system perhaps is in my opinion, most easily explained from a global perspective. And total debt in the world today, according to the Institute of International Finance, is over 400 trillion US dollars equivalent. So that includes all government debt. It includes all corporate debt, all bank debt, all mortgages. 400 trillion US dollars.
Without unfunded liability.
I'm sorry?
Without unfunded liability.
Okay, without unfunded liabilities. But stick with me here. This is the amount of debt outstanding in the world. And round numbers, the global economy is only 100 trillion US dollars. Okay? So your numerator is 4 times the size of your denominator. If you assume an average coupon in your numerator is 3%, do we think that the global economy can grow at 4 times 3%, which is 12%? Do you think global economy can grow at 12% in order to keep pace with the growth in debt, the organic growth in the debt due to the coupon? And I think the rational answer is no. So that in itself is the inflation component of the global debt GDP spiral. It's only grade 11 math, people. Don't overthink this. We are in a spot right now where we have inflation because of credit inflation. So Bitcoin is actually your insurance on that credit inflation. Bitcoin might not be correlated to CPI, your consumer price index inflation, but I am 100% certain it is your best insurance against your credit inflation. And that is pure mathematics, because we have reached a point in global debt where it is growing organically faster than your economy or your tax base can possibly keep up. Don't overthink it. We have reached the point of no return. You need your appropriate insurance. So Bitcoin, 13 years old, thank God for Bitcoin, okay? It is our insurance policy against this debt spiral that, by the way, that spiral doesn't even include the new spending to protect you from the inflation they brought on in the first place. So thank goodness they're spending more money to protect you from the inflation in the UK that they brought on in the first place. This is a clown show. Protect yourself from the clown show. Thanks.